You decided to try intermittent fasting. Maybe you heard it helps with weight loss, maybe with energy, maybe with focus. So you skip breakfast, you wait a few hours, maybe drink coffee, maybe just push through. And for a moment, it feels like you're doing it right. But then something happens. You feel tired, irritated, distracted. Your energy drops, your focus disappears, and the hunger feels stronger than ever. By the end of the day, you're exhausted. And that thought shows up. Maybe this isn't for me. Most people stop right here. Not because intermittent fasting doesn't work, but because they started the wrong way. Because here's something almost no one tells you. Intermittent fasting is not just about skipping meals. And if that's all you do, you're missing the entire point. It's not just fasting. It's about how your body transitions, how your hormones respond, and how your system adapts to a completely different way of producing energy. And when you don't understand that process, fasting feels hard, unnatural, even unsustainable. But when you do understand it, something changes. Because your body was designed for this, just not the way most people try to do it. Think about what usually happens. Someone decides to start fasting and immediately jumps into a long window. 16 hours, 18 hours, sometimes even more. From one day to the next, everything changes, and the body reacts. Hunger increases, energy drops, cravings get stronger, not because fasting is wrong, but because the transition was too abrupt. Your body isn't struggling with fasting, it's struggling with the way you started. Because for most people, their system has been trained for years to expect constant food. Breakfast at a certain time, lunch at a certain time, snacks in between, and suddenly that pattern disappears. Your brain signals hunger, your hormones follow the old routine. Your energy system hasn't adapted yet, and this creates a conflict. Your body is trying to switch, but it doesn't know how yet. And this is where most people misinterpret the experience. They think, I feel worse, so this must not be working. But in reality, that discomfort is not failure. It's a transition. And like any transition, it needs to be done the right way. Because fasting is not about forcing your body, it's about guiding it. And that begins with something simple, but often ignored. Starting slowly, not jumping into long fasts, but gradually increasing the time between meals. Giving your body space and to learn, because when you do that, something very different happens. Instead of resistance, that you feel adaptation. Instead of extreme hunger, you feel manageable signals. Instead of energy crashes, you begin to feel stability. But this is just the beginning, because doing intermittent fasting the right way is not only about how long you fast, it's about what happens during the fast and what happens when you break it. And this is where most people make the mistakes that ruin everything, mistakes that seem small, but completely block the benefits. In the next part, you're going to understand what you should and shouldn't do during fasting hours, why certain habits break the entire process, and how to make fasting feel natural instead of difficult. And this is where most people unknowingly break their fast without realizing it because they think fasting simply means not eating. But what really matters is how your body responds during that time. Even small things can completely change the process. For example, many people drink coffee during fasting. By itself, that's not the problem. But what they add to it is sugar, sweeteners, flavored creamers, even small amounts of calories that seem insignificant. Biologically, they are not. Because the moment your body detects certain compounds, especially sugar, your insulin responds. And when insulin rises, the fasting state is interrupted. Not always visibly, not always dramatically, but enough to block the deeper benefits that fasting is supposed to activate. And this is why someone can say they fasted for 16 hours and still feel no difference. Because technically, they never entered the state where those benefits begin. But there's another layer that makes this even more important. It's not just about avoiding calories. It's about avoiding constant stimulation. Your body is incredibly sensitive to patterns. Every time you taste something sweet, even if it has no calories, your brain anticipates a response. This can trigger hunger signals, cravings, and a subtle disruption in your hormonal balance, which makes fasting feel harder than it should be. That's why simplicity works best. Water, black coffee, plain tea, no constant input, no unnecessary stimulation. Because the goal is not to survive the fast, it's to allow your body to enter a different state, a state where insulin drops, where your system begins to access stored energy, where metabolic switching can actually happen. And when that state is reached, something changes. Hunger becomes quieter, energy becomes more stable, your mind becomes clearer. But this only happens when you allow the process to unfold without interruption. And this leads to the second mistake that most people make: what they do after the fast. Because breaking the fast is not just the end of the process, it's part of it. And how you break it determines how you feel afterward. Many people fast for hours and then eat quickly without thinking, often choosing foods that are highly processed, rich in sugar, or refined carbohydrates. And this creates a sharp spike in glucose, followed by a rapid drop. The result? Immediate fatigue, hunger returning sooner than expected, and the feeling that fasting doesn't work. But the issue is not the fasting, it's how it ended. When you break your fast with balanced meals, with protein, healthy fats, and foods that digest more slowly, something very different happens. Your energy remains steady, your hunger stays controlled, your brain continues to function clearly, because instead of shocking your system, you support it. And this is where fasting begins to feel natural, not forced, not difficult, but aligned with how your body actually works. And there's one more thing that makes a significant difference, something that most people overlook completely: consistency. Because intermittent fasting is not something that works once. It's something your body learns over time. The more consistent your eating window becomes, the more predictable your hunger signals become, the easier it is for your body to adapt. Your hormones begin to follow a new rhythm. Your body anticipates the fasting period. Your system prepares for it. And what once felt difficult becomes automatic. And this is when people start to realize something important. Fasting is not about discipline, it's about alignment. Aligning your habits with your biology, aligning your routine with how your body is designed to function. And when that alignment happens, everything becomes easier. Hunger becomes manageable, energy becomes stable, focus becomes natural. And this is where most people finally understand. The problem was never that fasting was too hard. It was that they were approaching it the wrong way. And in the next part, you're going to understand how to structure your fasting routine step by step, how to choose the right window for your lifestyle, and how to avoid the common mistakes that prevent most people from ever experiencing the real benefits. And this is where everything finally comes together, because doing intermittent fasting the right way is not about copying what works for someone else. It's about building a structure that your body can actually follow, adapt to, and sustain over time. Is not about copying what works for someone else. It's about building a structure that your body can actually follow, adapt to, and sustain over time. Most people make the same mistake at this stage. They look for the perfect protocol: 16 hours, 18 hours, one meal a day, and they try to force their body into it immediately. But your body doesn't respond well to extremes without preparation. It responds to progression, because the goal is not to endure fasting. The goal is to become efficient at it. And that begins with something simple: choosing a starting point that feels manageable. Instead of jumping straight into long fasts, you begin by slightly extending the time between meals. Maybe you delay breakfast. Maybe you reduce late-night eating. Maybe you create a 12-hour window. And that alone already changes your system. Because now, for the first time, your body experiences a gap, a space without constant input. And inside that space, adaptation begins. From there, you don't rush, you observe. You allow your body to adjust. And only then, you extend the window. 12 hours becomes 14, 14 becomes 16. Not forced, not abrupt, but gradual. Because when the process is gradual, your body keeps up. Hunger signals adjust, energy stabilizes, cravings lose intensity, and what once felt difficult becomes normal. But there's something even more important than the fasting window itself. And that crucial factor is timing, because not all hours are the same for your body. Late-night eating, for example, creates a completely different hormonal response than eating earlier in the day. Your body is less efficient at processing food at night. Insulin sensitivity drops, digestion slows, recovery is affected, which means that when you align your eating window earlier, you support your biology instead of working against it. And this is why many people feel better not just because they fast, but because they stop eating late. But beyond timing, there's another layer that determines whether fasting works or fails. What you eat when you do eat, because fasting is not a free pass to eat anything. Intermittent fasting is a tool. And like any tool, its effectiveness depends on how you use it. If your meals are built around highly processed foods, sugar, refined carbohydrates, your system returns to instability. Energy spikes, then crashes. Hunger returns faster, and the cycle continues. But when your meals are structured differently, something changes. Protein, healthy fats, whole foods, and this is where everything changes. Because once you understand this, fasting stops feeling like something you have to fight. It stops feeling like restriction, and it starts feeling natural. Not because your body suddenly became stronger, but because it finally learned how to adapt. Because the truth is, your body was never the problem. It was the way you were trying to force it. Too fast, too much, too soon. And when you remove that pressure, when you give your body time to adjust, something very different happens. Hunger becomes predictable. Energy becomes stable. Cravings lose their intensity. And what once felt difficult becomes part of your normal routine. Not perfect, but sustainable. Because now, you're not trying to endure fasting, you're becoming efficient at it. And that's the difference most people never experience. They think fasting doesn't work, when in reality, they never gave their body the conditions it needs to work. But now you understand. It's not just about how long you fast. It's about how you start, how you adapt, and how you support your body through the process. Because when you do that, fasting doesn't feel like effort, it feels like control. If this changed the way you see fasting, stay with this channel. Because here, it's not just fasting, it's understanding your body, so you can finally make it work for you.